The Atlanta Falcons prime for a deep run in year one with Raheem Morris and Kirk Cousins. We're examining the state of the Falcons roster today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Joe, I don't have anything fun for you today. What's going on?
Wow. That's sad, Kyle.
I know. I put a lot of pressure on myself, too, but we've been trying to prep for this holiday weekend, and as a result, all of my talking points end up bleeding together. Did you see the thing on social media about the albino grizzly bear that kept getting confused for a polar bear and kept getting moved all over the place?
No, the grizzly bears don't structurally look like polar bears, so I'm surprised somebody wouldn't be able to figure
it's
it
an
out.
albino that they got confused. They confused it for a polar bear, so they tranquilized it and moved it to the Arctic. And then the Arctic nature people.
This is not a true story. This is
that's not a real polar. That's not a real
nobody
polar bear.
goes through the process of relocating a grizzly bear without being certain what it is.
Was it Paul? Was it Paul the bear?
What? I feel like every sentence it becomes more and more unlikely to be true.
If you Google unlucky bear.
Unlucky bear.
No, don't unluckle. Don't Google it. It's what's the bear? Joey the bear.
Joey, what is happening? You went from having nothing to this?
I remembered what it was. So it's on this YouTube. Sad story of Joey the albino brown bear. I think this is a real thing.
This is unbelievable.
He's an albino grizzly bear and then kept getting shuttled and transported back and forth from North America to the Arctic. And then finally in the Arctic, they saw him moving south because he'd been there before. He's like, I got to get to warmer weather. And then the people thought that he was a polar bear that was heading south. And they're like, oh, we can't live in the wild anymore. So we got to move him to a nature reserve.
Kyle, this is not like finding a kitten on the side of the road and you find a home for it. You know what I mean? There are massive steps that are required.
The title of the thing is the unluckiest bear because he's super unlucky. He got moved 4 times.
Come on. I don't even understand that.
Joey the bear. Reply in the comments. Tell us if Joey the bear is real or fake news.
Oh, God.
Manufactured just like social media fodder. But there's enough hits on it for me to feel like it's legit that Joey the bear is really the unluckiest bear. You remember that time we were filming videos in Tampa and that guy was like, you're a bear, my friend.
Yeah.
You're Joey the bear.
Oh, wow. Wow, Kyle. I'm Joey the bear.
Joey the bear, the albino grizzly.
Let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons.
Grizzly beard.
Yeah. All right. So welcome fans of the Atlanta Falcons. It's your day. It's NFC South week. We had the Falcons, Panthers left. And what Kyle and I do every single summer is we study the rosters, we watch the film, we study the players, and we put all of the players in the entire NFL in a bucket. And their buckets are roster cornerstone, quality starter, rookie, adequate starter, replacement level, quality depth, non-roster caliber, incomplete evaluation, and the practice squad developmental player. Each bucket has points value signed to it, and each position is weighted towards positional value. And at the end of this process, which we are very close to, we'll be able to rank all the rosters and do so very consistently. And so we're going to show our work today on the Atlanta Falcons. Kyle Crabbs, the offense. Kirk Cousins is here. All the skill players that they drafted for Arthur Smith that didn't reach their ceiling under Arthur Smith, they're still here. What excites you? What are you thinking about with this unit?
I think it's the potential of it all. Where I don't think you can understate the leap that they're going to experience at quarterback.
Yeah.
and they have a long-term and a short-term plan there at quarterback. But like Desmond Ridder to Kirk Cousins is a huge, huge upgrade. And you're looking at the potential of Drake London and the potential of Kyle Pitts and being further removed from that injury. And Bijan Robinson, hopefully not being in a 50-50 carry share with Tyler Allgeier, because every time he touched the ball, he made 3 guys look like it was the first time they'd ever put pads on in their life. Look like me out there trying to tackle him a bunch of times. With an offensive line that has stability and consistency. Matthew Bergeron came into the mix for them last year, showcased that I think he's somebody they should count on being a long-term asset for them, in addition to a bunch of long-term assets that they have on the offensive line. So, like, it's the potential of it all coming together. And I think we talked yesterday about Derek Carr coming to the Saints and him supposed to be the catalyst that kind of creates the leap for the offense. And it didn't happen. So this isn't to say this is guaranteed to happen with Kirk, but I will say I think it has a better chance to happen in Atlanta this year than it did with the Raider or with the Saints with Derek Carr last year.
I'd agree with that for sure. Of course, Kirk Cousins is here. You mentioned that, and you mentioned the stability of the offensive line. I think that's huge. Like, all 5 starters are back, and like their top 4 backups are also back. Guys that have been just developing and have been around for a while that they haven't really had to use. So I think there's just a lot to like about that infrastructure. And you talk about winning in the NFL, and you kind of go back to who's your head coach and who's your quarterback, and you talk about the leap from Kirk Cousins to Desmond Ridder, but like also. I know Raheem Morris hasn't been a head coach in a long time, but I feel really good about him compared to what the dynamics were with Arthur Smith. Like, I know vibes aren't a thing, but dude, we clowned on Arthur Smith for like 2 years because of just how weird he was, right? And so I think Raheem Morris is going to be well positioned with what he's been through since he was last a head coach, the experiences he's had on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball, the coaches he's worked with. You feel like that's going to be a pretty significant upgrade. And I think that stability of that offensive line with Kirk, with an exciting mix of skill players, right? Like, there's so much talent in Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts and Drake London. To have that at your disposal and feel like there's nothing but ceiling and unlocked potential to get into, that's pretty exciting. I'm interested to see how some of these other ancillary pieces work in. Like, they signed Darnell Mooney to a pretty nice deal, and everybody remembers that second season he had in Chicago, but like really, really not much sense. And you can certainly point to their own offensive infrastructure issues and Justin Fields and erratic passing game that kind of takes away from it. But like, what are we going to get at Darnell Mooney? And then the other position is like this slot position where they acquired Rondale Moore, who was a pretty high pick out of Purdue. That's got a very specialized skill set. Can he factor in, and how much of an impact can he make? Right. So I think there's so much. I think you just look at everything here with the skill players and the quarterback, and there's nowhere to go but up, it feels like.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to tie it all together, because last year with the Arthur Smith offense, so much of their offense came down to not necessarily feeding and featuring your best players, but using your best players to get good matchup for your other players.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yes.
Felt like way too often it was like, oh, the touches for Allgeier off of Bijan, or the touches for Jonnu Smith off of Kyle Pitts. That I think a quarterback like Kirk, who's a really high level processor and executor of the design of the play, is going to be able to, I think, access those guys more than just, hey, there's got to be a lot of space and separation for you to pull the trigger and throw the ball, which is kind of where I felt like we were with Desmond Ridder at times last year, where that delivery was long. It wasn't crisp operation. The timing wasn't good. And that's not to say you have to come out and be like this high timing operation, but I think you got to have a confidence in what you see in order to maximize guys like Pitts and London that are big bodied guys. They're never going to be big time separators, right? Like, they'll beat you up and they'll win at the top of the route and they can run in the open field, but you got to leverage those guys. You got to throw with leverage in those guys. And I think that Kirk's experiences will be much more friendly to them doing that.
I've got another thought on Kirk. I've got another thought on Drake London that I'd like to bring to the table on the other side of it. So be sure to stick with us. Folks, the NFL season is coming up. I know you want to get to some of these games all across the country. So many big games. Well, if you want to get to them, the best way to get tickets is through Game Time. Download the Game Time app. It is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. The app is awesome, easy to navigate. They give you flash deals. They give you a picture from your seat so you know exactly what to expect. My favorite thing, the all-in pricing. You know what that final price is going to be from the beginning of the transaction. You're not going to be hit with any surprise fees right before you hit submit. So check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
The floor is yours.
So the thought that I had on Kirk Cousins is this. And once again, you and I are talking quarterbacks, and we're talking about a quarterback that's established at one place going to another place. Well, one thing that's been true about Kirk Cousins is while he has been now in 3 different places, he's had some carryover with the scheme, right? Like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan in Washington, then he gets Kevin O'Connell with Minnesota, and now he's with Zac Robinson. And what's Zac Robinson been doing for the last few years?
With the Rams.
Just been hanging out with Sean McVay, right? He's 2019, the assistant QB coach, held that through 2021. Then he became the passing game coordinator in 2022 and 2023. I mean, you got to feel like a lot of those Rams dynamics are going to be in place in Atlanta. And boy, oh boy, that should be exciting for Drake London. Like, imagine that guy getting a chance to be the Puka Nacua type player. Imagine Bijan Robinson getting to be the Kyron Williams type player. There's, and I mean, candidly, I know that they've had Higbee at tight end, but the talent that Kyle Pitts has is off the charts. Like, so I think
there's actually some interesting overlap between what the Rams asked of Puka Nacua and I think what Kyle Pitts could realistically be really good at too.
Dude, this could be really, really dynamic. So, and the offensive line's in place. Like, you've seen the Rams kind of like take that moment of like, yeah, let's get some dudes on this O-line to run the scheme. And well, I mean, Atlanta has those as well. So,
and has there been a quarterback? And I know like Kirk gets clowned. Kirk's Pro Football Reference nickname is Kirktober, and there's concerns with primetime Kirk and playoff Kirk and all that jazz, right? But like,
yeah.
Has there been a more successful non-Peyton Manning, Tom Brady in the last 10 years transition of a veteran quarterback from one team to another than Kirk going from Washington and signing in Minnesota and posting 171 touchdowns to 55 interceptions? And
so outside of the 2 like goats of our era,
right? That's what I mean. Like, and we kind of already outlined like the concerns of transplanting a quarterback from one environment to another. Kirk did it. It was really good.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, there's extensions from the scheme into this new place that he's going, like you pointed out. So I think that's a really interesting layer to kind of the concerns that we have about expectations versus reality of these big transactions, but he's lived it.
Kyle, this Atlanta Falcons defense got a lot better. And excuse me if I'm transitioning for defense and you had more to say about the offense.
No, I'm good.
That was kind of the big storyline with this team. They wound up being 11th in total defense, but situationally 3rd in third down, 4th in red zone. I still have some questions. We'll get into that, but like I want to acknowledge off the bat that under Ryan Nielsen, this defense did take a step forward, I thought, last season. And now Jimmy Lake comes over as the defensive coordinator. Of course, Raheem Morris, defensive background. I'm interested to see how this group evolves year over year with a lot of the same in place, but also a lot of very young players that flashed are now going to be, there's big roles coming for a Zah Harrison and for a Dee Alford and a DeMarco Helms and a Clark Phillips. So this, I'm very curious to see how this side of the ball comes together for Atlanta.
Yeah. I think there's plenty of potential. I think the concern is you just take the edge group. And I know we talked about this in the pre-draft or in the pre-show. But you made a reasonable investment in Arnold Ebiketie. You made a reasonable investment in D'Angelo Malone from like a draft capital perspective. Those guys, you don't really know fully what they are to the point where you spent 2 more mid-round picks on more edge guys in Dorlus and Bralen Trice. So they're throwing a lot at that position. I look at the potential of a lot of it and you see it. And then it's tied together with a guy like Grady Jarrett in the middle and AJ Terrell in the secondary and Jessie Bates on the back end. And like, I really like Kaden Ellis. So like
Kaden Ellis, he's come along, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good
He's a
player.
really fun player.
Yeah.
So like you have these players to kind of tie it together with, but then you look at these other spots and it's like, yeah, we have so much youth. We expect to have a lot of competition. We would expect we're going to get a certain floor, but like, who's it going to come from? Do they all click? What if they don't all click? And that for me is just like, as I look at Atlanta defensively and the questions that I have, it doesn't give you a great deal of peace of mind, but you'd think Raheem Morris being the one who's going to be working hands-on with that, along with Jimmy Lake, as like young coaches that have had some success, especially Raheem. Raheem's reputation is well established as far as being a defensive coordinator and a player development type guy. How quickly can it happen for the expectations that you have offensively? I think that's the big question that I have with Atlanta.
Yeah, on that edge group specifically, a lot of quantity. I don't know how much quality is there.
Right.
I'm wondering if you align with this, though. If one of these guys were going to become like a thing this year, feels like that's probably an Ebiketie, who
I hope so.
And me watching this team, I feel like he's been the guy that has had the most flashes of, oh, yeah, there's a little something there. There's some burst. There's some bend. There's some power. There's some pass rush moves. I don't know about the rest of it. And we'll see about Bralen Trice. Like, that's you see this happen. Like a pick like Bralen Trice has the stench of kind of want to get our guys. And I know Terry Fontenot's returning as the GM, but like they don't like something about what they've seen from like a D'Angelo Malone, I'm sure, who's really not done a thing yet in the NFL. So we'll see how that comes together. And then of course, Rook Aroroho.
Nailed it, Joe. You nailed it.
Rook from this point forward. Pretty high pick that they made in him. And, you know, Grady Jarrett injuries, right? That's kind of slowed him down a little bit. David Onyemata was awesome last year, but to be able to bring in Rook to be that third guy, I think is exciting, but he's got, you know, he's super athletic, but it's got to come together for him too. So
I think he's the one I'm the most optimistic. Like, I really like Dorlus. And I know he's like, there's an edge defensive line interior, like hybrid. The dude played everywhere.
Yeah.
So I like that versatility, but like if the light bulb comes on for Rook, that would be the guy, right? Like he is so physically talented. And I really like having that in this group of, you know, Grady Jarrett's a great guy to be alongside, and Onyemata.
Yeah.
They have a certain floor for the top two guys, but to have somebody who I still feel like he can probably get in there on some long down and distance situations and just be like, dude, just go. Right? Like his first step is good enough where you would expect if he gets some tomato cans over there, he'll just win with the first step.
Yeah.
And he can flatten. Now it's doing it through contact is where he needs to continue to develop himself a little bit. But I think he could have a nice role for himself quite a bit. I had a chuckle. You mentioned getting your guys and them not liking something about some of the edge group. Remind me, who's the defense coordinator?
Jimmy Lake.
Yeah,
Washington.
Where was he at as the head coach in college?
Well done, Washington. Yeah.
And who'd they draft?
Bralen Trice.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Jimmy Lake's last season at Washington was Bralen Trice's freshman year.
Watch a little Brandon Dorlus from his time in the Pac.
They're a little familiar with that, right?
Yeah. I think Nate Landman's going to make it tough on Troy Andersen to be a starter for this team based on him stepping into that opportunity last year where Troy Andersen was injured, playing alongside Kaden Ellis. I'm very fascinated to see. I know that Troy Andersen has a a really dynamic physical profile and the most versatile football player in the history of life in college, right? Like there's just the way it is.
Offense, defense, won multiple like player of the year, conference player of the year awards on both sides of the ball.
These
3 different positions in 3 seasons.
Yeah. So, but I think, I mean, that's the problem. Like when you go down, sometimes that opens the opportunity for someone else to come in and play well. And I think Nate Landman did that. So I'm curious to see how that sorts out in terms of who Kaden Ellis's running mate is going to be. All right, Kyle, let's talk.
Just real quick on Nate Landman. Isn't it crazy how many, like, the affirmation of like linebacker positional value? You knew Nate Landman could play a little bit of Colorado,
right?
You knew he could play. He get drafted? No. Played really good last. It's
ran 4.86. I mean, that's what happens, right?
But this is like your TJ Edwards.
These are your guys. The Jack Sanborn. Go ahead, Kyle.
Jack Sanborn. Like, dude, these guys exist every year, and it's
Chris
like, man,
Borland, keep going, Kyle. You know you got to type here.
If you get a 4.5 grade on a linebacker and he runs 4.9, just draft him in the 7th round so he doesn't go undrafted, because the dude's inevitably going to be able to play. And it's just Landman's the latest guy of that.
Right.
Because you're absolutely right. He was pretty solid last year. Very productive player.
All right. Let's talk about the secondary and tie a ribbon on the Atlanta Falcons on the other side of it. So be sure to stick with us.
The heck was that?
You didn't push the right button, Kyle.
You're right. I didn't.
You didn't push the right button.
You know what messed me up was your cadence, and be sure to stick with us. Because
I was trying to align with you, because you're doing the thing where you talk along with me, because I say the same things every time. Just telling on ourselves. We've done 2,000 something podcasts together, maybe more, probably way higher than that. So,
what's the feed at?
Oh,
here, I'll find out. You get us into whatever talking points you want to get us into.
We haven't gotten into the secondary for Atlanta, and it's interesting, of course, AJ Terrell at corner, your headline name there. And then we got to sort things out. It seems like Clark Phillips is going to get a chance to maybe start. Dee Alford, you factor him into the slot. We'll see if Antonio Hamilton can make some noise there at corner. But a lot of young players in Alford and Phillips. Interested to see how they step into roles. But, I mean, Jessie Bates, unbelievable free agent acquisition, franchise cornerstone for them. And then DeMarco Hellams late in the season last year got some playing time, and he might stiff arm Richie Grant, it feels like, as the running mate to Jessie Bates. So I think that you look at Bates and Terrell, those are your building blocks, but young players that are fairly unproven in the other 3, you think of 3 out of 5 starting spots here in the secondary. We got to see that come together.
2053. This is our 2053rd episode on this feed, and we did Locked On NFL Scouting for
NFL Draft, right?
Locked On NFL Draft, excuse me.
So we're
at about probably 2,200 episodes together.
Wow,
in that ballpark.
It's a lot, man. It doesn't even count like we've done like video stuff together, man.
Live shows, draft coverage, the hours and hours and hours of content. Like you said about the Falcons secondary, though.
What
I think you talked about the
players that they have. AJ Terrell and JC
Hellams potentially being the running mate, which I would not be surprised to see happen. And look, Jessie Bates, it was really cool. Calais Campbell signed a free agent contract with the Dolphins this year, but he
heard
played
about
last
it
year
for a can of corn he signed for.
He played like 750 snaps for the Falcons on the edge
last year. Good player.
But he talked about with Travis Wingfield, who used to be the Locked On Dolphins host, like the leadership elements that he brings, and he was very complimentary of Jessie Bates and Jessie Bates's emergence. And he's like, I knew Jessie from when Jessie was in Cincinnati and I was in Baltimore, and then we came onto the same team together, and really just getting a chance to work alongside him, and him being so hungry to learn about leadership. And like, I think for a defense that has as many young guys as this one does, and for a defense that has Raheem Morris kind of coming in, trying to mold and develop a lot of these guys, to know that Jessie Bates took that role on last year and Calais Campbell was so complimentary of it, I think bodes very well for the outlook of a lot of these young guys, both in the secondary, like Clark Phillips and DeMarco Hellams, but also the defense as a whole.
Have you had a chance to peep the Falcons schedule?
I'm going to do it right now.
Kyle Crabbs, the path. The
The
path.
Well,
is.
so we've already established this week they play the NFC East and they play the AFC West. I don't like the draw already. Just knowing that those are some of the games you're gonna have to play.
This is by far the easiest schedule in the NFL.
This one?
By far.
All right.
Every way that you want to measure schedules. Projected wins, last season wins, dude. The Falcons have a walk in the park.
Are you being sarcastic right now?
I'm absolutely not being sorry. This is 100% true. Look at the schedule.
I'm looking at it right now. So they are home against the Steelers.
Yeah.
At Philly Monday night, week 2 is not a great draw.
Yeah, okay. Get through this next game and then we're going to cruise.
Okay, so at Philly and then home against Kansas City.
Yep.
Divisional home games, Saints and Bucks. You get extra rest after the Thursday game against the Bucks at home to go to Carolina. Then you're back at home for a West Coast team in Seattle coming to the East Coast to play, although they do have extra rest based on their schedule in week 6. And you're in Tampa Bay, and you're home against the Cowboys. Okay, it's a good team to get at home. Then you're in New Orleans. It's an indoor game. Then you're in Denver, week 11. That's November 17th. It's not great, but okay. Bye week, week 12, late bye. I like that. Chargers, Vikings, Kirk Cousins revenge game. Raiders Monday night. Giants, Commanders, Panthers. I think that if I was to critique it, I don't love 3 non-East Coast time zone games in 5 weeks, but you do get the bye smashed in there, and the teams that you're playing aren't overwhelming.
If you look at the implied win totals for every team based on Vegas lines,
yep,
Atlanta has the easiest schedule in the NFL by $1 billion.
So you're expecting the breakout then?
I'm just telling you that their schedule's not hard.
So don't panic if they're 1-2 and they lose to Eagles and Chiefs.
I think they will be 1-2. But
right,
then,
but I'm saying, but don't panic. Don't panic if you're 1-2 in the first 3 weeks.
They could run the table coming out of the bye. I mean, there is. I think this sets up extremely well. If you get through that if you're 5-6 going into the bye week.
Oh, who did we do that with recently? It's like just get to was it Tampa?
Tampa. It's because it's like division, man. Like, yeah. Well, they play each other. That's helpful, right? Like,
yeah, but they don't play each other after the byes,
right? They have
it'll be those early season Tampa Atlanta games based on degree of difficulty of rest of schedule and late season byes and what you get after that. Those games are going to matter a lot.
Someone's going to get hot in the South, man, late in the season.
And Atlanta gets the first matchup at home on a Thursday. Okay.
I like it.
There you go. That's going to do it for us with the Falcons here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Make it a great rest of your day. We are out of here. Talk to you all again tomorrow.